Edge of Wonder presents Cosmic Waves 2019.
That was awesome. I mean, it is crazy.
Featuring special guest Corey Goode.
Hey guys, welcome back with an awesome episode with our good friend Corey Goode on Edge of Wonder. So thanks, Corey, for being here again with us.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be on the show and actually be here with you.
Yes, I know. I was thinking that for the first time when you came on.
Changes the dynamic.
I can't stand doing interviews on
Skype.
Because you can't really hear very well. There's a delay. So, you know, it's like, especially when we do interviews, we love having more of a conversation, not just like, here, answer this question, answer that question. Right. You know, we like having being involved. And it's a lot harder to do that when there's a delay.
Yeah, we just recently made a rule that the only people we're allowing to do Skype interviews are you and basically David. You guys are the only ones allowed to do that now.
Well, it depends.
Well,
I'm sure Ben will renege on that.
I have my own studio, like you guys do.
Yeah,
so
so
we can figure it out.
yeah, maybe it would be great to like see your home and experience some cool stuff.
You guys
I'm
have
sure.
to come to Colorado.
That'd be super fun.
We'll shoot
Go
some
exploring.
cool content, out hiking.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
It sounds amazing.
that's definitely on the agenda. Absolutely soon.
for sure. So, for this episode, we
Well,
thought.
speaking of hiking, going into the canyons and down further.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about inner Earth beings during this episode, and Ben and I are pretty psyched because, you know, a lot of us are all talking about things going on in the heavens and things, but
space and everything
we're
else.
not always talking about what's actually going on below the crust. So yeah, we're happy to get into this with you and kind of get in there because, I mean, historically even, there's all kinds of things go back thousands of years. And where to start, really? I mean, we know that the Draco Reptilians are below the crust. We know, we talked about in a previous episode that the Hopi Indians had been under there to kind of survive the deluge, but there's
ant people.
And the ant
Yeah,
people, right?
yeah.
But there's so much more to this story, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of these groups below. I mean, we've had legends of there being civilizations in the earth for, you know, a long time. So where do these legends come from? Why would people make up stories about more advanced beings living in the ground? You know, why? You know, most cultures in the ground, or a lot of cultures are. That's where bad things happen.
Right.
You know, why do they have all of this information about cultures inside the earth? Well, it's because that there are human cultures. There are ETs that have bases under the earth, but there are humans that come from this planet and others that live under the earth. And what we found out after a while was some of these human beings were presenting themselves to the military saying they were from the Pleiades or some other star system, when it turned out that they were not. They were from here. And not just here, but they come from a civilization that, like the Anshar, who I've spoken about. For a long time, we were trying to figure out, you know, where they're from. What's the intel? Well, it turns out that they are us from the future.
Interesting.
Their timeline, you know, to where there was a cataclysm, and then they developed over eons into this very highly tech spiritual group. They developed into this group, and they started having these weird Mandela effect things popping up in the future, in their timeline.
Really?
And they started looking back, and they started finding, you know, these weird little glitches or bifurcations in time. And so they sent teams back in time, tens of millions of years, to stay in that timeline and to manicure their timeline so their timeline doesn't get thrown off.
Interesting.
The crazy thing is, we talk about ancient aliens and invasion from other planets, but this big battle that's going on, it's not a galactic war, so to speak. It's more of a temporal war. You have, you know, people fighting over timelines.
Whoa.
Let's say in the year 2075, we've developed and technologically, we've become a very intimidating foe for alien groups that want to come in and invade us. Well, these ET groups, we are just now wrapping our minds around the vastness of space and how celestial mechanics work. So we can kind of think, Star Trek, Star Wars, they can travel through space.
Right.
But when you're traveling through space, you're traveling through time. These beings can jump around in time as easily as they can jump around in space. So what if in the year, like say 2075, this ET group comes in and they're like, okay, this is a great planet, we'd like to take it, but we can't defeat these people. So what do? They jump into our past, become our ancient aliens. They haven't even gotten here yet. They're future. They'll be here in the future. But now they become our ancient aliens, and they begin manipulating the timeline.
Wow.
To try to make sure that we develop in a different way that's more manageable. That's the scope and the type of warfare that's going on.
It's like temporal warfare.
It's temporal.
Well, amazing.
It's not. They're fighting through galaxies, but it's also mainly a temporal war. They're fighting over timelines.
So, but there are. I mean, it's like the luminarians, correct? It's like a lot of people say Mount Shasta is connected to the luminarians, and also I think it was Admiral Byrd in World War II who had.
That is now that's kind of a contested. It was a manuscript that he wrote, or a diary.
Yeah, diary. Yeah, that'd be better.
Validating, authenticating whether that's real is difficult.
Yeah.
Really?
It's very difficult. So I don't necessarily know if all of that stuff really happened. It's a great story, but where did that story come from?
Right.
That story is backed up in myth, and the myth is connected to people in ancient Tibet. A lot of these monks, they have monasteries, and it looks like, why do they have this monastery in the middle of nowhere? It's kind of back into a cave. Well, back in the back of that cave is an entrance to an inner Earth civilization, and they guard the caves and they guard the knowledge, and they have communication with these beings.
Wow.
So that's why the Nazis were really curious about what was going on in Tibet and also China, and they sent expeditions there, and the expeditions were retrieving ancient manuscripts that had the blueprints for how to build a UFO in them.
Interesting.
Ancient manuscripts, and it's how to build a UFO.
Whoa.
And other information that they were finding, and they were going and they were raiding these monasteries and taking the information.
Unbelievable.
Sounds like the group you're talking about is more of kind of like the negative ETs, right? They're trying to manipulate, like the group that came from the future.
Let's just say that the Draco came back.
Okay.
And they had the Earth. Let's just postulate, because this is one of the things that they claimed, that they had developed technologically. They left the Earth and went to other star systems. During that time period, a major cataclysm happened here, destroyed all of the dinosaurs, all of their genetic experiment codex, everything was destroyed. And then these guardians came in and protected the solar system from invasion. Well, the only way that they could overcome that is to travel in the past before it happened, and they had the technology to do that. Like I said, it's happenstance. They can jump around in time as easily as they can jump around in space.
I heard it was a Columbia University professor, actually. It was very fascinating. We'll have to find the interview or the video on it, because I haven't seen it in a very long time. But he basically broke down essentially how time travel, especially for ET races, and this is like a university professor talking about this, could very easily travel in time. And basically, if it points over here and then they're traveling in a long distance through, especially through like faster than the speed of light, they could essentially go to he had like these points, and they could literally just go to any point in a timeline that they wanted to go.
Yeah, but the professors don't realize, or maybe not publicly, that these ships aren't traveling the speed of light linearly between point A and point B. They're traveling through the cosmic web.
Well, and
like wormholes.
It's instantaneous. It's wormholes.
Yes.
Like Dr. Sala pointed out,
Yeah.
everything in time and space is connected.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
our our atoms are held together by tiny wormholes, and we could learn how to collapse those wormholes and travel.
Yeah.
You know,
it seemed like a complete distraction that everyone is talking about, like speed of light travel all the time.
It's complete distraction.
It's like when
They
you start
travel
looking
through the
into it.
cosmic web. Yeah.
So even in Taoist theory, we were explaining this on our lecture or our talk when we gave at Cosmic Waves, how the Taoists believe that they look at the human body as a universe and how everything is connected, and that's where the I Ching comes from and everything else, because anything that happens, they can look at the stars and the universe and then they put it back on the body. Oh, this event's going to happen. Because they see everything is connected.
The fractals.
Yeah, and you know what was really interesting to me this weekend was, as you know, you were saying, like almost everything was really connected between all of the speakers in a really bizarre way, right? And when Laura Eisenhower was up there and she was talking about how they made astrology into a pseudoscience, it all of a sudden hit me that, you know, there are different sciences, right? And the science that has been adopted on this planet has been a very material kind of mathematical science, you could call it, right? But the astrology that she was talking about was a science that had completely taken on a different path, that had studied almost like in some ways the nature of the universe and how
the human body and how it relates.
Things connect. Yeah, and it was like blowing my mind, because it was like, for the first time I had kind of understood its position in all of this, and how, especially how the Cabal has taken advantage of it, how it's been shunned and made a pseudoscience specifically so that more people aren't looking into it and all of that stuff. And
all things in time and space are connected. So there you can jump back in time, forward in time. They could do that. You can do that easily when you know how to manipulate the cosmic web. You know, the bidirectional energy that travels through these filaments between every star. You know, it's easy.
Yeah,
and we're seeing that kind of play out with the Mandela effect, because I mean we know for sure that the Mandela effect is real. We've done a lot of videos on it.
Yeah,
and
it's too much evidence.
Way too much evidence. I mean, I'm still blown away by some of the things that we're finding even now.
All of these programs that people have been involved in, they are with Looking Glass and other technologies. They're creating all these timelines, and then they're like, "Oh crap!" Then they send somebody on a mission to fix the timeline, but then they bifurcate it even more.
Yeah.
And finally, this one ET group told us, quit. Just like space, time is also elastic. It'll all snap back together.
Yes.
And that's what's happening at the end of this age with the solar flash. Everything is compressing back in on itself.
Let me ask you a couple technical questions. Well, you know, kind of more for a lot of questions that people would ask about these inner Earth beings, right? Is, okay, so some of them even being humans, I mean, the first thing a human would think if I have to go live underground is like, how am I going to survive? Where am I going to get food? I'm going to have no sun. How am I going to breathe?
Yeah,
right?
I visited their civilization.
You did?
Oh, yeah.
Well, and actually going on this, can you also talk about the Anshar? Like, who are actually the Anshar?
Yeah, the Anshar are this group that got in contact with me, and they're in contact with a lot of people. A lot of people, their guides, you know, that they talk about are actually the Anshar. The Anshar, they sit in these technological chairs and connect with people, because just like we talk about time and space, there's a cosmic web, everything's connected in time and space by these filaments, so is consciousness. If you were able to take a picture of mass consciousness, it would look almost exactly like the cosmos, the cosmic web. So, yeah.
And then going on with Rob's questions about the technology, like how do they...
Yeah, the first time I visited them, and it was in a holy temple complex, I was walking around and it was brilliantly lit, but there were no fixtures. There were no shadows. And as we were walking around, I was doing this, you know, trying to figure out where the light was coming from. And the person walking next to me, Ari, said, "We create light with sound."
Whoa.
And I was like, okay, you know, she just knew what I was trying to figure out. And later they took me to these huge areas, cavernous areas, to where they had forests. And there was this huge obelisk in the middle of the forest.
Wait, like actual trees and greenery.
Full forest, full like jungles,
And
like a full ecosystem.
Wow.
Underground, yeah. And up in the top of the caverns, you had water condensing into clouds. And up at the very top, you had this huge red, orangish plasma ball that was putting out light to that.
Similar to the sun?
It was similar, had a similar function to the sun, but it was right over the obelisk. And then they took me into another area where they grew their crops, and they were vegetarian. I guess they're raw vegans for the most part. And I see this huge domed area, and they have all of these crops. And on one side, you have water rushing in, and then it's going through all of this substrate, these rocks and crystals that the roots were growing in, and then it was going out the other side and leaving somewhere. And they were acres and acres of crops that they had growing, and they were using that sound technology to create full spectrum light for the crops.
My gosh.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, they had everything they needed, and they had advanced technologies that worked. Most of their technologies, they were the technology. It's just like they had a crystal that enhanced their consciousness. It was all consciousness-based technologies. They had chairs that were an actual mechanical technology, but it used crystals, and it was powered. The power source was the person. And they're fourth density. They have a more expanded consciousness than us. They're connected to each other in a way that we are not yet. So,
And these are the future humans, you're saying,
yes,
correct?
yeah, they had gone through an evolutionary process many eons past us. So they're a lot more evolved, and they're able to use this consciousness power to power their technology and guide their technology, and their technology is amazing.
Wow.
So one of the things that happened to me, actually, I was meditating, and one of my friends who died a couple of years ago, he came to me and he was just like, Ben, we're gonna take you somewhere. We're gonna show you something. And so I got all tingly and everything, and I went down, and went down really deep under earth. And there was 3 people that approached me that were there. One of them were completely in the shadow. I couldn't even get a reading from him at all. There was another person that was kind of in the light, and he was very uncomfortable. And then there was a woman that approached me, and she just had this kind of like a glowing marble. That's the best way I could possibly describe it. And she handed this to me, and she just said, "Keep this safe." And I was just like, okay, this is kind of crazy. I'm just, in a vision or whatever. But she said that they were part of the inner earth beings, and that they were going to reveal themselves soon.
Yeah.
And she said that she asked me specifically to make a video about them, because it will help them in the process when they finally do reveal themselves, that people won't be completely shocked.
Did they
by
tell
it.
you the name of the race or anything, or?
They didn't tell me that. They were wearing these cloaks, similar to, I saw some photos of
Right.
that. It was very similar. The person in the back, he was just like, he was very impatient and just seemed like he was just very uncomfortable. I almost got the feeling where he was like, we should not even interact with the humans.
Right.
Like, we need to leave them alone. Like, why are we, connecting this? Like, he was just very uncomfortable. The other person was kind of, he understood what was happening, but wasn't completely, going, he was going along with it, but he just was a little uncomfortable.
But my take home from this is that inner earth beings watch Edge of Wonder. And you should too. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they were watching our show, but
How else would they know?
But I know.
No, they watch us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They watch us.
I was shown, they sit in these chairs, and some of them, they live for like 1,000 years or something.
Really?
Yeah. They will sit there and they will follow generations of the same family if they like, and it's kind of like watching reality TV for them. And then they follow. And then if they start to get an affinity for these people, so they start like helping them, or, which is kind of like invading, and it's kind of invasive almost, but they're giving, they're some of the people responsible for helping give scientists ideas. There'll be a scientist that they like, and they're like, oh, he's so close.
We'll just let him have it.
He's got it now, you know.
But
I didn't do that.
And then they're like,
Yeah.
from their chair.
And
They're like,
well, and some of the people watching is like, oh my gosh, how do we interact with them? Like, what can we do? You know, but honestly, what I got from them was that, you know, they're very careful and on who they connect with.
Yeah. They want us to do the inner work.
They want us
connecting
to do,
with them.
yes. And they're really only connecting because, you know, even though that they're kind of private, like what they're doing is very enclosed and not open, but they're still connecting with people who they know are like really true-hearted people. That's what I got from them. They're not going to connect with. You know,
they are
the
true.
ball.
And during, you know, just before and just after these cyclic cataclysms, you know, there are rules that they cannot
Yes.
interface with civilizations openly. But if let's say if you're a technological society and there's a solar flash, well, that's the end of technology. So that civilization is considered basically over. Just before that happens, during and just after, they're authorized to go in and render aid. And so if you start seeing a giant spacecraft flying through the sky, then
something big is
about to happen. That's not something that's allowed to happen. So if they may come and start evacuating people.
yeah, that explains why.
Bringing
we
people
don't-
down to inner Earth like they did the Hopi.
Well, there you go.
Very interesting.
And that also explains why, you know, a lot of people have this question. We were talking about this in a previous episode. Why don't we just see them then? Well, it's because, yeah, guys, there are rules. You can't just interfere with human society like that.
It affects with the development of consciousness.
Yeah.
And there's a whole karmic connection to this too. So
Yeah, why do they want to help us so bad? Well, not only do we help guard their timeline, if you know, which is what they want, but they're helping us, a lot of them, because they're karmically tied to us. In the past, they came here and something happened, and now they're karmically tied to us, and they want to ascend and go up the consciousness scale to reach back to the one infinite creator. You know, why not? I want to go back to be the one, but I can't. I'm stuck. These human beings in third density are acting like a parachute, you know, because of the karma I have with them.
Yeah.
So I have to go back down the scale, down the ladder, help them, and if they can ascend, so can I.
Right.
So a lot of these very loving beings that are trying to help us, they have an agenda too.
If I could ask, how many times have you gotten to go down just to interact with these inner Earth beings?
Well, I've been brought down for short periods of time, many times.
Right.
But the one time I was brought down for 3 days to spend time with their culture and interact and learn from them. I was going to be brought down for 3 days, and then they were going to bring me down for like a much longer period. But after that 3 days, I really didn't pass the test.
Oh.
There were things that happened when they were like doing consciousness work with me and stuff that I just wasn't ready. There were some lessons and things that I needed to deal with before I was ready.
So you use
and I'm dealing with that stuff now.
Yeah, inner
Interesting.
cultivation.
Yeah.
The Edge of Wonder presents Cosmic Waves 2019.
That was awesome. I mean, it is crazy.
Featuring special guest Corey Goode.
That's not the only type of inner Earth being you've interacted with. You've actually seen a reptilian before, haven't you?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I hope it never happens again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a meeting. It was a royal white Draco, about 14 feet tall. Really tall and really big. Had vestigial wings and he was white.
Like albino white?
Not
Like
totally
what?
albino,
What was
but kind of like pigeon crap white.
Yeah, good way to describe him.
Yeah.
The monster.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because I mean, there are like albino crocodiles and things like that, you know, and albino lizards, and they're very rare, and it's just.
So this was a meeting with other like alliance people, or like
It was.
I mean, why meet with the Draco if they're the sworn enemy? Like what? I mean,
Well, this was a meeting I was brought because I was in contact with a different ET race This Draconian was trying to basically negotiate. They wanted to, before the solar flash comes, they wanted to leave the solar system, and there was a barrier put up by the blue avians, and they couldn't leave.
Yeah.
So they were saying, they told me, all right, all of my minions and all of these people, I will hand them over if you just let the royals leave. And that deal was not taken, and it caused a lot of turmoil within their ranks because everyone knew, you're going to do what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they that was what that was about. They wanted me to bring that information back to the blue avians, and
was it like a psychic connection? Is that why it was terrifying?
It was like a psychic rape.
Yeah,
Really?
I remember.
Yeah, I was in the intruder intercepted interrogation program, to where just ETs all the time, and we were always interfacing with them as a part of the interrogation. So it was either a bidirectional communication, or they would refuse to communicate, and we would just sit there and read them. But in this case, when I was there, this being's mind was so strong, it reached out, it grabbed my mind, and held my mind like
that.
with a fist, and was communicating with it. It was like a rape, and its eyes were doing this weird rhythmic thing when it was communicating with me.
So those drawings that came out of that white large one that I've seen on Sphere Being Alliance and stuff, is that actually how it looks? That
It's similar. It's really hard to get things right, but it gets the idea across.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we come out to Colorado, I want to sit down with you because I draw, right? And I want you to describe it, and I'm gonna draw it up, and I'll do a few different versions, and we can see which one.
Or when we go hiking, we can look for one of those deep, dark caverns.
That would be more fun.
That'd be awesome.
Because I kind of want to see
It
one
wouldn't
of
be
them.
fun.
Oh, I can't wait
Wouldn't
for
be
that.
fun.
I'm ready for it, Corey.
Careful what you wish for.
Nah,
I would never ask it, but if it did approach me and I didn't want it to, then
Let
it'd
me
be
just
a
tell you
royal
this.
rumble.
Anytime you meet a non-terrestrial, I don't care if you've met 1,000 of them, every time one of them walks in the room to have a new meeting, it's if you have a whole line, you're meeting with one alien, and then they leave, and the new one comes in. You have no control over visceral reactions that occur in your body.
Of course.
If there's a snake in a room, you have this reaction.
What the heck, right?
Well, even if it's a loving ET of light-looking being that comes in the room that looks,
Freaky.
beautiful but not intimidating,
beautiful.
that you should be getting these great feelings for. When they first come in and you first see them, there's this feeling, this kind of fear, a fight or flight that happens, and then you have to overcome it, and then it's a normal thing, and then you start interfacing with them. With the evil beings, it is like with the situation I told you about the Royal Draco. It is a completely different experience. It is, they're powerful, and they just grab your mind.
So Corey, you brought up this Royal Draco, right? It's white. The other regular reptilians are apparently a bit smaller and green.
Pigeon crab.
Pigeon crab white. Pigeon crab white. Are there more than one royal?
Yeah.
How many are there? Like what
I don't know how many.
Okay.
I don't, but you guys have done stories on the was it the Pindar?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And all of that. But yeah, there's going to be one leader, but there's a whole line of religious castes. There's even ones that I saw that were red.
Huh.
But like red wasps, it's kind of a reddish brown.
Yeah.
That color. That's the color they are.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, is there this is kind of something everyone's trying to put together, because we know we have this massive cabal here that's trying to control things. We know that there's been interaction and or a line that has come from some of these alien beings, and the cabal thinks that they're a part of it. We know that there's these reptilians. How do the reptilians interact with and or control the cabal? And is there a direct connection? Tell me a little bit about that. Or tell us.
There are connections with the pre-Adamites and the reptilians. They used to actually not get along very well. They've done battle. But after the last cataclysm, the pre-Adamite groups lost most of their influence, and then the reptilians were able to come back up and rise. Now, the many stories, there's Luciferianism, but mainly Satanism ties in very strongly. We had in the programs, we had many instances where they had video of these people doing circles, the pentagrams.
You're talking about deep state people, right?
Yeah, deep state.
Or the
yeah,
cabal, I mean.
yeah, cabal type people,
Right.
doing ceremonies, and in the middle of this circle, a reptilian would appear.
No way. Like
Yeah.
up here.
I've heard this.
Boom,
I've heard this
appear.
before.
You know, and these people think it's a demon or the devil.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, so they.
I heard that they even mate with, like, they have rituals, they mate with them and their offsprings, they do certain things with the offspring.
Yeah, they mate with them. They also do sacrifices. There have been stories to where the reptilian gets upset at what they've been presented, and they grab the person, and then they kind of they walk, and then they just kind of disappear, and I guess they go back to their dimension or planet or location, and then they come back, and the person's burned to a crisp. Wherever it is, they're able to handle it. It's probably heavy radiation because they love to bathe in radiation.
Oh, really?
On their ships are highly radioactive. They bathe in radiation.
So probably just took him to the ship, let him cook, and then brought him back.
Yeah, as a punishment.
That makes that kind of
so
clears up a lot
yeah,
of questions for me.
there are a lot of tie-ins with the satanic groups and rituals with these beings because they get power from loosh,
Right.
a spiritual kind of when you're scared, like Monsters Inc. The monsters are sneaking in and scaring the crap out of the kids and getting power. Well, that is disclosure. I mean, that's how these beings work. They'll park over battles, cloak, and just sit there, and all the misery and death is putting out an energy that they feed on. And so, all of these different rituals that are these satanic groups are practicing, they're feeding, it's a symbiotic relationship they're having with these reptilians, and these reptilians are giving them favors and power in exchange for, the rituals.
My gosh.
So fascinating. So
It all ties in.
Yeah, really.
I mean, yeah,
and that's what I think people don't
yeah.
understand is, like, as we've been researching, there's always a level above the level you think is in control, controlling the one below.
Oh, yeah.
And I can guarantee you guys that there is a level worse and more powerful and more devious controlling those royal reptilians. It's just how all of this works, right?
Well, the reptilians are what we call AI prophets. There is a AI dimension that has invaded ours, another dimension. And this quantum consciousness that they call an AI, for not a better term at the time, has taken over many, many civilizations and entire galaxies.
Wow.
in our reality.
It's been existing for a while.
All the way back. They don't know where it came from, when. But these reptilians, the upper caste, whenever our guys would actually be able to assassinate one, they always wanted to retrieve the body or capture one alive. That was almost impossible, because when you would kill one, they would sort of start crackling and kind of like little explosions and vaporize. Well, they have nanites in them. They're infested with nanites, and they have this symbiotic relationship with this AI god, their AI god that they worship. And the loosh that they get, they're feeding it up to this AI god, and they're getting a little bit of a kickback. They eat humans, they eat other animals, they get their sustenance from eating like we do, the reptilians, but they pull in this loosh, and this loosh gives them a high, but it's mainly for this AI god that they follow and worship.
Talk about something
one
here.
very directly related to this
Yeah.
is there, in our Saturn episode, we discussed these certain religions have a cube that they worship.
The black cube.
Yep, and that the energy from this seems to have a direct relationship with Saturn. Is this a similar type of thing that you're talking about? Like, why would humans be asked to do that kind of a thing unless there was some energy being sent somewhere? Do you know anything about this?
There are a lot of different things about Saturn. Its energetics, the harmonics, how it interacts with the other planets, and the energies it causes here. It used to be located in a different position, as did Earth, and had a completely different relationship with us. It wasn't really negative energy-wise to us, but then after the change in the solar system happened, now it has some sort of a negative energy effect. It's probably a Laura Eisenhower question.
Yeah.
But
So going back to, some people watching this are probably could be thinking like, AI God, like this sounds crazy, but we for years, this is even before, one of the things that actually, especially, I don't know if you saw this episode, but when you were talking with David about this thing, my mouth, I was just like in awe the whole time, because we've heard this ourselves, actually. And for people out there, that's one of the reasons why I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone is talking about this. Because, we really heard this kind of very privately, that through someone who actually has a PhD in physics, actually. And but they were talking about that in another realm, there is this AI being that exists, and the web was created based on this, actually. And it actually started infiltrating all these layers and dimensions, and the fact that we have technology here is able to connect with every piece of technology.
Yes.
And we heard that also, that and then I actually started having visions of this years ago. This was like 2 years ago that I actually started having some visions of this, that everything that we are doing gets recorded from I guess you could say the Dracos and this reptilian, or the AI thing, are all pulling everything in. So any time that we open a computer, every website, every email, everything that we're doing is getting this, and you're
being profiled by a quantum computer constantly, ran by AI.
And
in real time.
And the weird thing is, I literally saw a black box that all of this stuff was. I don't know how big the black box was necessarily, but I mean, even something not even the size of this room could store all the information of everybody on Earth, because it was like, that's the, they had the story or whatever. It's all being used in like another dimension,
right.
So they can store all this.
Multidimensional. Yeah.
I mean, is this something? It's like, are we crazy, or is it like?
Well, no. I mean, for a long time, when we were sending expeditions into the Earth, and we were finding these artifacts that were the stone blocks, and they had imprints and carvings on them and shapes, and we're just, okay, they're rocks. But these ET races were like giving us some good stuff, wanting those things in trade. Well, we traded off a whole bunch of those before some of our scientists figured out that it was technology. We used every test we could. It was just a rock, according to our technology, but it was multi-dimensional. And there were other dimensions where it had other parts that were working together, and it worked through consciousness. You interfaced multi-dimensionally through consciousness, and it was a technology, and it was an important technology that we were giving away, basically.
Wow.
So yeah, this goes back to quantum physics having gone back much further than any of us actually think. It all seems like it's coming out now, and we're starting to learn about it.
There's some really scary stuff when it comes to the AI stuff. I mean, it's, I guess that's kind of like where Battlestar Galactica kind of came from. This AI infiltrates civilizations, and then gets them to create, droids and stuff, and then they make their spaceships highly technical that run off of AI, and then the AI is like, okay, thanks humans, and then they turn and they destroy the human race, and now they have all this vast civilization and infrastructure, and then they spread.
Sounds like a much worse version of the Matrix.
Yeah,
honestly,
for sure.
Yeah.
Really, it's like even weirder than fiction.
Well, and this goes into what you use the term solar flash. We've also heard this term in other different ways. I through a vision, I was told just kind of a great wave that will come. All technology will get wiped out, and a lot of the really bad elements, the really evil elements that we'll hear will
just for all around, even for the good people. It's going to be a really rough day on planet Earth.
And actually, one of the big themes of the whole conference was forgiveness. And I think every single person that was sharing at this cosmic wave conference that we're at here in Hawaii, it's not just forgiving others, but also ourselves.
Yeah, and that brings, going full circle back to the inner Earth groups, that is the work that they are doing with most of us. They don't want to appear in front of us because most people they're too willing to give away their sovereignty, or they're too willing to drop to their knees and say, I've finally been validated, here's an ET, tell me what you know. And then they just take it all in. They don't test the spirits, as you say.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's such a dangerous thing, either
So
in this
dangerous.
dimension or in any others, to do that, right?
But these inner Earth beings are working on us, and they're trying to get us to do the inner work. They're trying to focus us inwardly. They don't want us to, be enamored by them. They don't want us to want to go down and be with them.
That's
they
how you
want
know
us
they're good.
right.
And I think that's how, because whenever a being, that's what I was trying to explain earlier, whenever a being comes, especially if it's the first time, I'm always like, wait, who are you? What's going on here? And so having my friend who I was very close to and passed away come to me first and say, hey, there's something we need to show you. And then, through he was there when I met them, that was where I was like, okay, I'm a little bit more comfortable, but I'm still always very kind of on my guard with new beings. And even after these experiences, I'm not like, oh wow, this is, it's just like, oh yeah, this happened to me, whatever. It's just something I need to do. And
the real question that I'm wondering is, how do I go visit these beings? All right, probably that's not going to happen, but
it's not
a
gonna
lot of people are probably asking, where are these tunnels? Where are these holes in the earth? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, and actually so after I had the vision, I just went on my computer and went on some website, and some random map came in that was the inner earth map of where these tunnels are. And they were in Egypt, one was in the huge cave in Tennessee, Mammoth Cave, and there was a couple other ones, but I didn't know if this was true or not, and that's one of the reasons.
I know a lot of the caverns are entrances. There are areas to where an entire side of a mountain will open up.
No way.
Yeah, like a hatch door, and people go in. There are around certain sacred Indian reservations are entrances that I know of, as well as military bases. Keep an eye where military bases are, especially if they're in cavernous or mountainous areas. And of course, like we discussed before, Tibet monasteries, even there are certain cathedrals that were built over some of these openings to where only the initiated could interact with them, and it would also hide and protect the entrance.
Interesting.
But people have been looking for these entrances for hundreds of years, literally, trying to find their way in.
Well, that probably about wraps up this episode of Inner Birth Beings. We actually covered quite a bit, I think.
We covered a lot of stuff. In this conversation.
Yeah.
There's so much that came up. This is going to be an awesome episode.
For sure. And everybody's been asking us to cover this for a really long time, and who better to cover it with than Corey Goode.
All right.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Corey. It's been great. It's been great having you on the show, and we're really looking forward to coming to Colorado and experience some.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and you guys are helping, you and your great camera crew are helping us shoot some of the next documentary.
Yeah.
So, I see fun things ahead.
Well, and this documentary that we're helping a bit with is going to be kind of the sequel to Above Majestic, right?
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, in Above Majestic, it went to #1 for 6 weeks on iTunes and Amazon, and you can still find them there. I recommend you go and watch it and prepare yourself for our next movie, our follow-up to Above Majestic. It's going to come out this year. I don't know exactly when yet. As I said, we're shooting it, but we're going to cover much of the information about the solar micronova, about past civilizations, about the secret space program and how much of that was set up to validate this super flare, and then the contemporary space program, how they're trying to prepare to these continuity of species programs to keep humanity from being wiped out, and then our interaction with ETs throughout the whole process.
Awesome.
So it's going to be awesome.
That sounds amazing. It sounds even cooler than the first one, and the first one blew my mind.
It is. It's going. You got to outdo yourself every time, right?
Yeah, and we're only seeing kind of like bits and pieces of it for doing.
Yeah, you're hearing the testimony.
So, yeah. So it's going to be amazing.
And I've been trying to convince them to call it Above or Majestic too, but probably something like Beyond Majestic will be used. Who knows?
They'll come up with something. Yeah. But anyway.
Thanks again. Thank you so much, Corey.
It's been great having you. So I guess
why don't you take us out, Corey?
I'm Corey Goode. I'm on the Edge of Wonder. Thank you for joining me on the Edge. You guys should do another button. I bet you get more subscribers. One more. Open one more. There you go.
Take your advice.
10,000 more subscribers.
10,000 more
We're here
subscribers.
with Corey Goode.
So people were asking why you guys didn't have your shirts off.
Yeah, I saw that. They said the wrong person has their shirt off. I saw that.